right. And hopefully we'll get their address and all that so we can, whoever needs it can write them, and they'll still be part of the body, right? Just because they're in another state doesn't make them any less part of the body. So keep them in prayer. I'm sure they'll be coming to visit and seeing us, keeping us updated, seeing how those little ones are growing. So it'll be good. I'm excited for what God has for them. All right, so we'll jump into the Word. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 6 again this week, and we're going to be finishing up sort of this mini-series inside of a mega-series that we're doing on the Lord's Prayer. Hopefully you've been blessed by it, and it has changed the way that you pray. I know it has for me so many times in the past month and a half that we've been doing this. I'll go to pray, and I'll be reminded of this prayer, and I'll say, man, Lord, help me to make sure that I'm using this prayer as sort of a model prayer. Am I being concerned with the things that you're concerned with? Am I praying in a way that is pleasing to you? So hopefully it's had the same impact on you. This week's message is going to be challenging for sure. I'm sure there are going to be people who probably won't enjoy this message. This may not make your top 10 list, but I believe it's an unbelievably important one. Okay, unbelievably important, because I think we all share the same experience of going through difficulties and trials, right? That isn't unique to anyone. So funny, I can't tell you how many weeks we get done praise team practice over here, and I go over and I get in my office and I start spending some time praying and looking over my notes and everything, and I'll hear Dave say something, and I'm going, is he in my notes? How does he know what I'm talking about? And I overheard him just talking about that Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. Right? We're going to have trouble. There's no doubt about it. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. But what does that mean? What do we do in times of trouble? Where is God in the middle of all of that? I believe these are questions that all of us have probably asked at one point or another, or will ask in the future when we go through these difficult challenges in life. So I'm hoping that today's message can give us a good foundation upon which to hold on to be anchored to in those times of trouble when the storms of life hit, and they will. Okay? So let's be in Matthew chapter 6. We'll look at 9 through 13 again, focusing on 13. All right, so verse 9. This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. And we're going to be focusing on verse 13 today, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. What are we praying there? What is that all about? Throughout this whole series, I've been sort of challenging you, and it's been a challenge to me to actually look at this prayer that many of us have memorized and say, what in the world is Jesus saying here? What is it that we're asking for? So when Jesus instructs us to pray, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one, what exactly are we praying for? What is this all about? So today we're going to once again kind of take the long way around to get back to this verse, but stay with me, and I promise we will come back to this. Today, I think the key word that we're going to look at is the word temptation. Temptation. What does this mean? What does this look like? What is this all about? Okay? So I think we get a hint as to what this word temptation is all about in the second part of the verse. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. So there's this connection that's made between temptation and the evil one. Okay? So whatever this word temptation means, it's connected with Satan. Okay? But what is the connection? I think we see the connection in the word deliver. Deliver. It says, but deliver us from the evil one. That word deliver literally means to draw or rescue a person to and for the deliverer. We'll get back to the for of the deliverer in a second, but let's talk about draw or rescue a person. When you see the word temptation, I want us to hear the words draw, lead, influence, okay? Because this is what the word temptation means. It means to draw, to lead, to guide into something, okay? So whatever this word temptation means, it has to do with drawing and leading to Satan, okay? Now, here's the technical definition of the word temptation. It's a fundamental desire to engage in short-term urges. Now, this becomes so important. A fundamental desire to engage in short-term urges for enjoyment that threatens long-term goals. Okay? Make sure we get this. Temptation is about short-term, not long-term. Temptation is not about the big picture. It's about the here and now. Okay? So it threatens long-term goals. In the context of some religions, temptation is the inclination to sin. What does it mean to sin? It means to miss the mark of God, to miss the will of God, to miss the character of God. It is to move away from God. Okay, so temptation is this inclination to pull away from God, to draw away from God towards Satan. Okay? Temptation also describes the coaxing and inducing a person into committing such an act by manipulation, listen to these words, manipulation, or otherwise of curiosity, desire, or fear. Okay, so temptation is this pulling away from God towards Satan by means of deception, by manipulation, by the use of fear, stress, anxiety. All of these things are tools that the enemy uses to draw us away from God and draw us into himself. Okay, this is what temptation is. Okay, now, something I want to spend a little bit of time talking about is temptation a bad thing or good thing? Don't be afraid. Bad thing, right? We would say, oh, that's a bad thing. Okay, now, what does temptation look like? We just saw the definition, but what does it technically look like? What is a temptation in life? Can temptation be a good thing? It can be a seemingly good thing, right? Okay, let me ask you this question. Is getting a promotion at work a good thing or a bad thing? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Okay. This is what we need to understand. When we look at a circumstance in our lives, an event in our lives, anything that transpires in our lives, judging whether it is good or bad has nothing to do with our comfort and happiness. Okay? Did you get that? Whether something is a temptation, whether it is a drawing us towards Satan or not, has nothing to do with our happiness or our comfort. So when something happens in our lives and we want to deem it as good or bad, what are we basing good or bad on? When we make a determination, if we just got a promotion at work, good or bad? Well, we would look and say, oh, it's got to be good, right? Why? It's going to make me more money. It's going to make things easier with the bills. It's got to be a good thing. Is it a good thing? Right? Who knows? How do we determine that? Okay, a couple weeks ago, we looked at a passage in Luke chapter 12, the parable of the rich fool. You remember this story we looked at like 3 weeks ago? Right? This man, this farmer, has this tremendous harvest. So much of a harvest, such a great harvest, he doesn't even have room in his barns. So what's he do? Tears them down, builds new barns. This is good news, isn't it? What a tremendous harvest. He has been blessed by God. This is a good thing, right? If you've heard the story before, you know that's not what happens. You know that the man looks at his barns that are now filled with grain, and he goes, man, I've got so much for years. I'm going to kick my feet up, eat, drink, and be merry. And what does God say? You fool. You fool. Today, your time has come. Who's going to get all this stuff that you've stored up for yourself? What has it gained you? Nothing. Was that a good thing or a bad thing, that harvest? Turned out to be a bad thing. How do we know? It had to make him more comfortable, didn't it? Had to be a good thing. It was a bad thing. Why? Because it drew him away from God. So the determining factor on whether something is good or bad in our life is not our comfort and our happiness, whether it makes us more happy or more comfortable. It's does it lead us towards God or away from God? Does it lead us towards God or towards Satan? Okay, so anything in our lives can be a temptation. What is a temptation? Something that draws us away from God and draws us towards Satan. Okay? So in our lives, we have to be extremely careful that we do not look at every single event as being good or bad through the lens of our comfort and our happiness. We need to look at it through the lens of which way is this going to draw me, towards God or away from God. Make sense? We looked at Proverbs 38 a couple weeks ago, which says this, give me neither poverty nor riches. That's a weird prayer, isn't it? Lord, give me neither poverty nor riches. First part, I think we all would say, hey, we don't want that. We're with that prayer. Lord, don't give me poverty. But I think all of us would be like, no, I'll take some riches. Right? I'll take the Powerball. Anybody play that? Liars. We're saying, man, we'll take those riches. We're expecting a check, by the way. What's 10% of $640 million? We would say, man, Lord, I want the second part. Give me some riches. But that's not the prayer here in Proverbs. It's, man, Lord, don't give me either one. Why? Because he sees the temptation in both. That both can be temptations. These seemingly good things can be a temptation to lead us away from God, and so can these seemingly bad things Okay, so the measuring stick of whether something is a temptation or not isn't whether it makes our lives better or worse or whatever. It is, does it lead us away from God or not? Okay, so that's the definition of temptation. We have to be careful not to gauge events happening in our lives based on our happiness and our comfort. Okay, now let me tell you another reason why we shouldn't gauge it that way. Because not only can Satan use both of those things, seemingly good things and seemingly bad things, to draw us away from God, God will use seemingly good things and seemingly bad things to draw us to him. Okay, now we're getting into the hard part. All right, we're going to hear some, I don't really like that part of this. Okay, this word temptation is used elsewhere in Scripture, but guess what it's used with? Guess what the word is? To test. To test. To try. That's what this word means as well. All right, when we see it in the Scripture, it means either to tempt or to test. And it means it says this, the word means either test or tempt. Context alone determines which sense is intended, or if both apply simultaneously. And we'll talk about that second part in just a second. All right, the context alone determines whether it's a temptation or a test. Only the context determines whether it is a good thing leading us towards God, not our happiness and comfort, or a bad thing leading us towards Satan. Okay? Same thing is true when we look at the circumstances in our life. What determines if it's a good thing or a bad thing? The context. Where does it lead us? Where does it take us? Does it take us towards God or towards Satan? That determines it. Okay? Here's the thing. God will use seemingly good things in our lives to draw us to himself, but he will also use seemingly bad things in our lives to draw us to himself. Okay? Now, this is the danger that we fall into. We want to put these in nice, neat, easy little categories and go, man, if it's a good thing in my life, if it improves my happiness and my comfort, it has to be from God. God is really blessing me right now. Right? You've heard people say that. Just got a new promotion, just got a new job, just met somebody that's so fascinating and really loves me, and this is a good thing. God's blessing me. Oh, man, I just lost my job, just broke up with my girlfriend, just did all this. Satan is really attacking me right now. Right? How many of us do that? We look at the situation and we make an immediate judgment on this is a good thing or a bad thing based on our happiness, based on our comfort. And we attribute those things to either God or Satan. This is a good thing. I like this thing. It's making me happy. It's making me more comfortable. It's got to be God. Oh, this thing is making me not as happy. This is making me uncomfortable. This is making me not as life isn't as easy. So this has to be Satan attacking me. Hold on, not so fast. Don't be so quick, because the way that we judge good or bad is not by what? Happiness and comfort. It's about whether it leads us to God or away from God. Okay? Now, let's make a little bit of a point here. First, let's look at the word test. What is a test? How does a test differ from a temptation? A test is a procedure intended to establish the quality, performance, or reliability of something. And listen to the second part, it's so important, especially before it is taken into widespread use. You test something in order to be used for a greater purpose. Why do we test your knowledge of something? To see if you're proficient at it so we can send you out to do it. Right? Before I can send you out to do your job, I got to give you a test to make sure that you understand it, to make sure you've got the prerequisite skills to do the job. So the goal is something bigger. All right, so God doesn't tempt us, he tests us. What does that mean? God tests us to see where our faith is, right? To see where our steadfastness is, to see where our trust is, to see where all of these different things are. Why? Because it has a greater purpose. He's leading us somewhere that's even bigger than where we are. Okay, and we have to know where we are to get where we're going. Okay? How do you view tests? Negatively or positively? We have a tendency to look at them kind of negatively, don't we? I don't want that test. Why? Because it makes us uncomfortable. But if we look at a test through the lens of this is a positive thing, this is to see where you are in order to help you get where you want to go. Okay? My son, we took him to a trampoline park in Florida, and we noticed he was getting increasingly agitated, right? I thought, man, he's going to be so excited to go to this thing. They got a Ninja Warrior course, and they got all this stuff in there. And after like 15, 20 minutes, he's like, let's go. I'm ready to go. I'm like, you ready to go, man? You haven't tried this warped wall thing yet? You haven't done this over here yet? You haven't played dodgeball over here? You haven't done any of these things? What's wrong with you? Dad, I don't want to do it. I just want to go. I'm like, well, hey, what's going on? I'm trying to get it out, and what's going on? Dad, I just want to go. So then I did what all good dads do. I said, boy, I paid $20 for this. You better get in there and do something. Not leaving until you get up that warped wall. But so then finally later on, he says, Dad, I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to fail. I was nervous about failing. And I said, man, Peyton, this is what you've got to understand. Failure is not a bad thing. Failure is not a bad thing. We can learn from failure, right? If you learn from it, then you know how to improve. You know how to get better, right? In his mind, he's associating this test with failure, and that's a bad thing, as opposed to looking at it going, no. This gives me an idea of what I can do and what I can't do, what I need to improve on, what I've already mastered, right? This gives me all of this information that becomes beneficial in moving forward. So how do we view tests? We have this idea to think that tests are a bad thing. No, tests can be a great thing. They can be a good thing. God is using them for good purposes. So when we experience these things in life that are difficult, that are challenging, that show us where we're falling short, rather than putting our head down going, nobody loves me, I'm horrible, I can't do this, whatever, say, oh, no, this is where I am, and God wants to get me here. I just need to see that I'm here and not here. Anybody ever, I'm sure we've all taken tests like that, right? Have you ever went into a test and you've been like, I'm going to nail this? I am so prepared. And then you get it back and it's full of red ink. And you're like, oh my gosh, right? We've all done that. It doesn't do you any good to think you're here when you're really down here, okay? This is useful information, and God wants us to see where we are. He wants us to see where we need work, so he's going to test us. All right, let's look at a few verses to back this up, just so you don't think I'm making it up. James 1. James 1, 2 through 4 says this, consider it pure joy. We've heard this verse, right? Popular verse. Anybody hate this verse? Every time I go, the Lord takes me to it, I'm like, take me to a different one, a better one. I don't want to read this verse. I wanted to say, consider it pure joy when I dump money on you. It's not one of those. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Consider it pure joy. Why in the world would we consider it pure joy, Lord, when perseverance and difficulties and all these things are required? Why would we consider it joy? Because listen to this. Remember, a test does what? Gets us prepared for something bigger, for something greater. He says, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. This is God's desire. God's desire isn't to see you fail. God's desire is to see you mature, lacking nothing. He wants you over here. But before we can get here, we got to know where we are. Okay? God is working in us. This is why we should consider it pure joy. This isn't God punishing us saying, you're an idiot. This is God going, no, I love you and I want to get you here. Right? But we got some work to do. This is why we consider it joy. God is invested. He's involved in our lives. This isn't God going, I'm done with you. I'm finished. This is God going, no, I'm working with you. Right? This is why we can consider it joy. Let's skip down further in James 1. This is 12 through 17. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial because, and listen to that, blessed, fortunate, favored, is what that word means, is the one who perseveres under trial because having stood the test, the person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Anybody here want the crown of life? Anybody looking for that? Anybody want to spend eternity with Jesus? We want to be in intimate relationship with Jesus? That's what we want, right? In order to get there, what do we have to do? Persevere. There's going to be some trials. So it's when tempted, no one should say. Now listen, notice the switching of the words here. First, under trial, that's verse 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial. Same Greek word. And then look at 13. When tempted, same Greek word, but they changed it into English. Why? Because there's two different directions. Notice the direction. The first one, when we're talking about trials, God wants to lead us to where? Close to him, maturity, completeness. Now he's going to switch it to temptation. Watch the direction. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil. Notice the connection, temptation and evil. It says, nor does he tempt anyone. God never tempts us. Okay? You hear that? He tries us. He tests us. What is the goal of those trials? What's the goal of the test? Closer to him, right? Temptation leads us away from him. God never does things to lead us away from him. So every trial that we go through, and we're going to talk about this more in just a second, right? God is involved in leading us to him, okay? Never away. Verse 14, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. I like that, our own evil desire. So we play a part in this too, right? How many people know what our natural tendency is? Do we have a natural tendency towards holiness? No. We have a natural tendency to do our own thing, to do evil things, to do selfish things. That's our natural tendency, okay? So when people start to say, man, Satan made me do it, maybe, or maybe it was you. Then, after desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. So we're leading away from God. Temptation leads us away. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Don't be deceived. Understand the difference in this. When the hard times hit in your life, don't be deceived and thinking, oh, well, that's got to be this. It's got to be a good thing, so it has to be God. It's a bad thing. It has to be Satan. Don't be deceived by that. See what's really at work in it, right? See that there is spiritual warfare going on here. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, verse 17, listen to this. Every good and perfect gift is from above. Let me ask you this. What is the good and perfect gift in this passage? What's he referring to here? Every good and perfect gift. Go back to verse 12. Blessed is the one who does what? Perseveres under what? Trials. So what is a good and perfect gift? The trial that has been sent to you to do what? Lead you to God. This is a gift. This is why we rejoice. This is why we consider it pure joy. God has given us this gift, and we go, well, I don't want that gift. I want to send that back. I want to exchange that for something else. God's going, no, no, no. Do you understand how good this gift is? This gift is going to lead you to me. It's going to draw you to me. Right? Do we see the trials in our lives as being a gift from God to shape us, to form us, to grow us into the image of Jesus, draw us into relationship with God? All right? If we don't, we will never be able to do what the psalmist does in Psalm 26:2. It says, test me, Lord, and try me. Examine my heart and my mind. How is God going to do that? If we pray that prayer, Lord, test me, try me, examine my heart and my mind. How do you think God's going to do that? By sending us easy things, comfortable things? Psalms 139, 23, 24 says this, search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting. You hear the request in this, Lord? Test me. Is that your desire? Test me. I can tell you most of the time that's not mine. Right? To say, Lord, test me. Show me where I'm failing. Show me where there's a deficiency in my faith. Show me the areas of my life where I'm not trusting you. Show me the areas of my life where I'm still in control. Is that our prayer? Lord, show me these things. Okay, now, Psalm 66, 8-12 says this, praise our God, all peoples. Let the sound of his praise be heard. He has preserved our lives and kept our feet from slipping. For you, God, tested us. And I want us to hear the language in this. For you, God, tested us. Who tests us? God tests us. We all agree with that? Okay, good. That's a trick question because we're ready. It says, for you, God tested us. You refined us like silver. How many people know the refining of silver is not an easy process? It requires heat, right? It requires fire. You brought us, listen to this. Who's the you in this? You, God. You brought us into prison and laid burdens on our backs. Who did that? God, okay? So when we go to prison, well, I won't use that as an example. When we feel these burdens on our back, don't be so quick to say, Satan's really tempting me. Satan's really hammering me. Satan's really putting it on me. There are burdens that are going to be put on us by who? God. There is fire that's going to be lit under us by who? God. We're going to feel like we're being boiled, but what's God doing? Refining. Okay? You brought us into prison and laid burdens on our backs. You let people ride over our heads. We went through fire and water, but, don't you love that? But you brought us to a place of abundance. Okay, how great is that? Okay, so we got to go through trials to get the crown, right? We're going to experience difficulties. We got to experience growth. We got to persevere. Why? Because that perseverance is going to lead us to maturity. Okay, so before we can get to this place of abundance, there's going to be some trials. There's going to be some tests. But this is the great hope that we have. The promise of abundance. God is leading us where? To Him. Into joy, into peace, into abundance. This is where He's leading us. But the road to that is sometimes filled with suffering. It's sometimes filled with trials. Isaiah 48, 10, 11 says, see, I have refined you, though not as silver, which that's an interesting phrase. I won't get into all that, but it was Cool. Though not as silver, I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. Who afflicts us? For my own sake, I do this. How can I let myself be defamed? I will not yield my glory to another. Okay, so God afflicts us. Not always. Does Satan afflict us? Absolutely. But we have to be careful not to take every affliction that happens in our lives as this has to be the devil. This has to be the enemy. No. God will afflict us too, but for a different purpose. Drawing us in a different direction. Why does he do this? He says for his own glory. How did this prayer start? Our Father, who art in heaven. What's the next one? Hallowed be your name. This is about your name being hallowed. This is about your name being glorified. This is about you being praised. It's not about me. It's not about my comfort. It's not about my happiness. This is about your glory. Why is God doing this? To bring us to a place where he can receive glory in this. Right? And can I tell you this? We benefit when God gets glory. Okay? Doesn't always happen in reverse. When we benefit, it doesn't mean God always gets the glory, right? Sometimes we want to steal that for ourselves, but this is what I know. Every time God is given the glory in a situation, guess who benefits? Me. Okay? All right. 1 Peter 1, 3 through 7. You say, man, well, you're reading a lot of Old Testament stuff here. That's Old Testament. That's the old wrathful days of God. That's the angry days of God. Can we get into the grace-filled stuff where this stuff doesn't happen? Okay, 1 Peter 1, 3 through 7. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. All right, so listen to the promise. It's over here, right? We have this inheritance that's been promised to us that cannot fade, it cannot spoil, cannot be taken away from us. It's waiting for us. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you, who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. In all this you greatly rejoice. We rejoice that this is out here, that this abundance is out here, that God has promised us this. Though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. Now remember, in these contexts, trials is from who? God. Temptation is from who? Satan. Temptation leads us towards Satan. Trials lead us towards God. So what are we talking about here? He says, man, you're going to have to suffer grief in all kinds of trials, not temptations, trials. It says, these have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. We're to receive honor. We're going to receive glory if we are willing to persevere. I didn't put this one on the slide, but this morning this one was really on me. 2 Corinthians 4:17, this light and momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all measure, beyond all comparison. That is the eternal weight of glory that we are going to receive if we persevere through the affliction that is light and momentary. You might say, man, it doesn't feel light and momentary. This thing that I'm going through doesn't feel light and momentary at all. Because we don't have the perspective, right? What does temptation want us to do? Look small, here and now. What I'm going through right here. Let me take the easy way out. I don't want to experience this. God is not in it for the short term. He's in it for what? The long term. Is God willing to give you a little bit of affliction now to help you grow in order to give you an abundance for all of eternity? Yes, he is. Are you willing to do the same thing as a parent, as a good parent? Yes, you are. Are you willing to discipline your children, to help them to grow, to help them to do the things that they should do, to not do the things that they shouldn't do? Are you willing to do that in the short term for their long-term health? Yes, if you're a good parent, you are. I'm willing to set my child down and give him a timeout. I'm willing to give him a smack on the butt when he needs it, right? Why? Do I like that? Do I like having to punish my kid and see him unhappy? No, I don't like that, but I realize I've got to do it or he's going to grow up and be a spoiled brat. He's going to grow up and not go towards God. He's going to go towards selfishness. He's going to go through his own pleasure, towards his own desires. That's the way he's going to go, okay? So God does the same thing with us. He's willing to say, hey, listen, I hate it. Does God enjoy the affliction that we have to go through? No. Does God enjoy when we have to go through these difficult times, through these suffering? No. God hates it, but he sees it as necessary in light of the big picture. Right? Anybody ever go to the dentist? You ever get a fill-in? You ever get a root canal? Why would you go through that? Why would you put yourself through that? It's horrible. For the long-term health, right? You're willing to sacrifice the short-term for the long-term. Okay? All right, so do we get it? Do we see the difference here? Do we see the fact that God will use seemingly bad situations in our lives in order to grow us, to lead us towards himself? This is in 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10. It says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect when? In weakness." Do you feel weak in the middle of good times? Do you find yourself when everything's going great going, oh gosh, I don't feel like I'm... Do you find yourself doing that? No. When do you find yourself weak? In the midst of the struggle, in the midst of the battle, when you feel like you've been beaten up, when you feel like you're down, and this is the promise that we're given. The Lord's strength is felt most effectively when? When we are weak. Okay? Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. How do we get closer? How do we get closer to God? By persevering through these hard times. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses. I have joy in the middle of struggles. Why? For when I am weak, then I am strong. When does God show up most powerfully in your life? When you're weak. When you're weak. Listen, I would love to say that the common story that I hear is that people come to Jesus in the middle of great times. I wish that was the case. Man, I wish that people were just flooding into the church and flooding into my office saying, Jason, man, everything is great. My marriage is fantastic. I'm making tons of money. Bank account's full. Healthy as an ox. I mean, everything is great. I want to give my life to Jesus. That is not the story that I hear. Is that the story you hear? Do people call you up and say, hey, listen, I got to have Jesus because everything's great? No. When do they do it? When life is falling apart. When life is falling apart. I've told this story so many times. My son did not sleep as a little kid. Ever. As a baby. Like, I don't think he's ever slept. And I can remember holding him, laying on the couch. And one night, after like several nights in a row of not getting any sleep, I can remember just holding him and I'm going, Lord, if you want to do something, this just cannot continue. This boy he's crying all the time. He's always unhappy. Things are just terrible. And this is what the Lord said to me. If he wasn't, would you get to hold him close like this? Would you get to hold him close if he was in his bed sleeping happy? No. How many times does the Lord rejoice and go, yes, he's hurting. Yes, he's unhappy. Yes, she's miserable. No. But those are times where he goes, yes, I get to hold him close because they're willing to come to me. Right? You have a child that's healthy and happy, you take them to the park and boom, they're gone. You only get to play with them. You don't even get to see them. But what happens when they scrape their knee on the ground? Come running right back to dad. And I'll be honest, there's a part of me that's going, I'm sorry they're hurt, but yes, come on, you need daddy. Right? Doesn't it make you feel good? Especially when you run right by mom, right to me? Right? God doesn't rejoice and go, man, I hope you fall and scrape your knee. But God's going, man, if you scrape your knee, Dad is here. And I want you to run to me. I get to hold you close. So will God allow these things to happen in our lives? Yes. Will he even go as far as to cause it sometimes? Yes. Now, don't use that analogy that I just used. God isn't pushing us down to scrape our knees. That's a bad visual. But he will cause things to happen in our lives that will make things uncomfortable, that will make things difficult. Why? So that we will come to him. Okay? I want to end with this. A story that a lot of people hate. A lot of people hate, but I think we can find great encouragement in this. All right? Fantastic encouragement in this. It's in Job. Right? How many people are going, I knew you were going to go there. Job 1, 6 through 12. All right, remember the part of that definition that I told you for tempting and testing? When you go back to it, the word means either test or tempt. Context alone determines which sense it is, or if both apply simultaneously. Let me tell you why I believe that every time, I was going to say most of the time, it's simultaneous. It's simultaneous. It's a test and a tempt. All right? Let me show you why. I believe we get a great illustration here in Job. Job 1. This is Job 1, 6 through 12. It says, one day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? Satan answered the Lord, from roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth. What's he roaming back and forth looking to do? Seeking those he can devour, right? That's what he's doing, roaming back and forth. Now listen to this next thing, because I think this is unbelievable. Verse 8, then the Lord said to Satan, who initiates this conversation? The Lord. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? Right? Who brings Job into this mess? God brings Job into this. Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. So which direction is Job always running in? Towards God. Towards God. He shuns evil. He doesn't run towards evil. He's going to God. Okay? Listen to Satan's response. Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied, have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. All right, so what's Job say? Satan says, look, Job, no wonder he's doing such a good job. You've blessed him. You've blessed him. Look, he's got everything that he needs. So Job is handling the riches part okay, right? Lord, don't give me riches, don't give me poverty, don't give me either one. He's handling the riches part okay. Satan says, but this part over here, this is how I'm going to get him, right? It's not through the riches part. I can't get him that way. He's handling that well. But the other part, you're protecting him. You're not letting me get there. Verse 11, but now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. So Satan says, look, you want to see Job turn around and come running to me? Let me tempt him. Let me tempt him. Let me hit him with some stuff that's challenging. Let me hit him with some stuff that's difficult. The Lord said to Satan, very well then, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Okay, so look, I want to make sure that we get this, because this is the part that, again, people want to separate. We want to say Satan does the bad stuff, God does the good stuff. Satan's going to go out to do some stuff for Job. Where's God in this? God's in the middle of it, right? People want to somehow feel like they're letting God off the hook by taking God out of suffering. We can't do that. That is not comforting. That is not comforting. To think that Satan is out doing this to Job without God being around, does that bring you comfort? To think that Satan can attack you at any time? No. No, this story is going to tell us, no, Satan can't lay a finger on you without God saying okay. Okay, now initially that may be jarring to be like, it makes me uncomfortable that God's in the middle of my struggle. Why is he doing it? To draw us close, right? He's doing it to draw us close. This is why God allows us to go through these things. So we got to put him in the middle of it. When we take God out of suffering, it makes no sense, because now we have a Satan that's allowed to run around and do whatever he wants to do. That does not bring me great pleasure. That does not bring me comfort to know that at any point Satan can attack me and God is not present, that God is not in the middle of it, that God has no idea what's going on, that God is powerless in some way. Notice that God sets the parameters. God says, okay, do whatever you want. Everything's free game. Don't you lay a finger on him. God gives a permission. Satan does nothing without permission. Okay? Why? Because God is in control. God is sovereign. Okay? Before this, and somebody even mentioned this morning when we were talking, you've seen the old cartoons with the angel and the devil? You know, and they're both doing this, and they're talking, trying to get people to do a certain thing. In one way, that's sort of an accurate picture. We do have the spiritual warfare that's going on in our lives where Satan is constantly trying to pull us to himself and God is pulling us to the other side. But it's not exactly a fair picture, an accurate picture, in that they are not equals. This is not a struggle. They're not on each side pulling for you and God's going, God just can't seem to get you. That is not what's happening, okay? They are not equals at all. If there is a time we begin to drift towards Satan, it's because we make the choice. And God says, I have to give you free choice. We talked about this a couple weeks ago because I love you. This is not because God is powerless. God is not powerless in this situation. He's not powerless in your situation. He's not absent in your situation. Okay? God is in the middle of it. All right, we skip on down. Job 1, this is 20 and 22. This is after Satan has come in. He has destroyed flocks. He has killed Job's children. I mean, he's taken everything away from him except his wife, which I feel like is ironic. He leaves the wife. to torture. Right? So he's done all of these things. Now Job has lost all of his possessions. He's lost everything. All of this stuff to Satan says, you take that, you let me take that from him, and he'll curse you to your face. Satan's taken it all. What does Job do? It says that Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Was this a difficult thing? No question. No question. So don't mix up for a second when James says, consider it pure joy that we are giddy when good things happen, bad things happen. We are not going, lost my job today. Yes. Man, I'm sick today, not feeling real good. Awesome. That's not what this is. Job shaves his head. This was a sign in this culture of devastation, right? Of depression. Job is hurting here. Okay? Tore his robe, shaved his head, then fell on the ground to do what? In worship. In worship. Does he curse God? Does he fall into temptation, and is he drawn towards Satan? No. Instead, what does he do? He worships all the more. He moves in the direction of God all the more. This is what he says, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. Man, does Job get the Lord's prayer? Hallowed be thy name. This is about you, Lord. This is about you being glorified. We talked about that. How in the world can we glorify him? Because he's worthy, because he deserves it. That is a sign of trust to say, God, I trust that your ways are so much higher than my ways. I trust that you know what's going on, that you're in control, that you have the perspective, that you know everything. That this is what Job does. Job says, Lord, I trust you in all of this. Do you think Job had it all figured out? Do you think Job knew exactly what was going on? In this story, it's crazy. Job is never told. Did you know that? Job is never, he never finds out. God never says, hey, let me explain this to you, Job. Me and Satan got together, and we had this conversation. He never does that. He never finds out, right? God just simply says, hey, were you there when I did this? Were you there when I laid out the dimensions of the world? Were you there when I did all this? He points to his holiness, and what does Job say? I will shut my mouth because you are worthy, because you are holy, because you are in control. That God, you understand and see things that I can't even imagine. I am going to trust you. That's what Job does. How many people think that God knew that Job was going to do this? Yes. Right? So we look at the story and go, why in the world would God allow Job to go through this? Because he knows, guess what? He's not going in that direction. Which direction is he going? Towards me. This was a test of Job to do what? To strengthen his faith, to draw him close, to draw him near. Satan is tempting. He saw this as a temptation. He's going to draw Job away. God saw it as a test that's going to draw him closer to him. Every situation in our life, every single one, is both a test and a temptation. There's spiritual warfare going on for you, for your soul, for your eternity. Okay? Every single thing that happens in your life, guess what the enemy wants to do? Use it to pull you to him. Does he care if it's a good thing or a bad thing in our eyes? Heck no. He just wants us to come to him. So will he use that promotion you just got at work to draw you away, to fill your time, to make you too busy to spend time with God? Absolutely he will. Think he has a problem with that? Nope. Satan has no problem blessing you if it means drawing you away from God. Okay? At the same time, the situation that's happening in your life, God's going, I want to use that to draw you to me. Right? So not just the good times, even the difficult times in our lives. God's going, no, I'm going to use this situation. The question is, are we aware of this? Are we aware of the struggle? Are we aware of the warfare? This prayer makes us aware of that. I believe this is what this prayer is all about. When it says, lead us not into temptation, we're saying, God, please don't let me be drawn in that direction. I understand that everything in my life that Satan is going to try to use to pull me away from you. He's going to tempt me with that. Help me to see that and draw me to you. What are you going through right now? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do you see it as an opportunity to be drawn towards God? Or do you see a danger to be drawn towards the enemy? Everything in our lives we're in a battle. We're being pulled in one direction or the other. Are we going to pray, Lord, you draw me to you? No matter what the situation is. Man, Lord, I'm going through a struggle. I'm going through a battle. Draw me to you. Lord, things are going so good right now. I just got a promotion. I'm moving to a new city. Things are so exciting. Draw me to you, because I know there's temptation in all of it. There's a steady pull by the world, by Satan, by myself, my own nature, my own sin nature, everything. There's this draw that's going to pull me away from you. And if I'm not aware of that, I will fall into that like a current. I want to read this one last verse. 1 Corinthians 10, 12 and 13 says this. So if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. If you think you're standing firm, when do you think you're standing firm? When things are going well, right? I think I'm good. He's saying, man, be careful. There's temptation in that. He says, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. What does faithful mean? To show up every time. Every time. There is no circumstance in which God will not show up. He's in the midst of everything. There is nothing where God's going, I'm just going to let Satan do his thing, and this one I don't have any control over. There's nothing I can do. God's in the middle of everything, every situation. He's faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. Now, what a verse that's misconstrued so often. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. I hear so many people say that in the midst of their struggle. They'll say, well, I know the Lord's not going to put more on me than I can bear. Is that true? No, it's not true. God allows more to be put on you than you can bear all the time, because he wants you to run to him. When you go through those struggles, when you go through the hard times, when you go through the difficulties, is that more than you can bear on your own? Heck yes, it is. But God says, slow down. I'm going to give you a way out. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Now, I love this word, endure. I looked this up in the Greek, and this is what it means. It means to draw, to pull. It's like an undercurrent. The picture of this, anybody ever got caught in an undertow? You know what an undertow is? When you go out into waves, there's this current underneath that's pulling you the opposite direction. So it doesn't pull you towards the shore, it pulls you into the water. I love that. That's the picture of this word, to endure it. He gives you the strength. He's going to pull you through it. He's going to pull you the other way. So when you feel like there's this tide that's crashing on you, there's this undercurrent of the Lord that's pulling you towards himself, right? In every situation. So whatever you're going through right now, if you're going through a time where you go, gosh, the waves are just beating me up. They're crashing into me. I feel like I'm just being pulled apart. God's going, no, I'm drawing you. I'm pulling you. I'm calling you to me. Trust me in the midst of this. I'll give you strength. I'll give you a way out. I'm not going to leave you in the midst of this without any options. I'm going to draw you to myself. Do we trust God in everything, even in the tests? He's faithful. He's faithful. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for this message. It is an unbelievably difficult one. It's so difficult, Lord, because I think we've been taught our whole lives that the things that make us happy and the things that make us comfortable are good things. They're good things. We don't see any danger in those things. But I pray that you would open our eyes to see that in every single situation, there is both a temptation and a test. There is a temptation in every event in our lives, the seemingly good ones and the seemingly bad ones. There's a temptation to be pulled away from you, to leave you, to trust in ourselves, to make us kings of our lives, rulers of our lives, to go against all the things that we've been reading about in your prayer. But there's this draw that pulls us to be our own masters, our own kings, to accomplish our own wills, to hallow our own names. Lord, I pray that we will see the danger in every single thing in our lives. Everything. That we'll see the potential for that. So no matter where we are in our lives right now, whether we're in a great spot and things seem to be going so well in our lives, or whether we are just being pummeled by life right now, I pray that we would see the danger of falling away from you. That in every one of these circumstances, Satan wants to capitalize them and pull us away from you. But at the same time, I pray that we see you in the midst of all of it. That we'll know that you're going to take this temptation of Satan, this plan of Satan, and you're going to use it for our good. Lord, just like you did with Joseph, of years and years of going through struggle and things that seemed so difficult and so unfair, he finally came to realize later in life that you were allowing him to go through all of these things because you had a greater purpose for him. You were building him. You were developing him. You were growing him so that he would be prepared at the time to carry out your will. I pray that we see the same thing, that in the midst of our trial, we see your hand, that we'll trust that you're in the middle of it, that you're leading us somewhere, you're drawing us somewhere, that we're not going through it for nothing. The pain and the suffering and the difficulty is not meaningless. It's building for us an eternal weight of glory. Help us to see that, Lord. Help us to trust that. Help us to trust you through the whole process. Why? Because, Lord, you have proven that you are faithful in every circumstance. There is no circumstance in which you have given the enemy free reign in our lives and you're not in the middle of it. Every single thing that the enemy means for evil to draw us to himself, you mean for good. So help us to see life through your eyes, to see through your perspective, not through our limited perspective that gives in to the limited nature of temptation, that cares about the here and the now only. Help us to, as best we can, Lord, to see the bigger picture. And when, in those areas where we can't see the bigger picture, I pray that we trust that you do, that you know the plan, you know where things are going, you know how things are going to work out, and you're working in the midst of it. So again, Lord, help us to trust you in the middle of every single trial, in the middle of every single temptation, know that you are pulling us and drawing us to yourself. So we love you, Lord, and we thank you for these truths this morning, and we pray them